The man knelt in the last pew. His lips moved. His hands were clasped. His head was bowed. Padre Pio was arranging candles near the altar when he noticed him. Early morning. The church was empty except for this one figure in the back. Nothing unusual. Pio continued his work, straightened the altar cloth, checked the oil lamps. But something made him glance back. The man was still praying, still kneeling. And then Pio saw them. Words. Not sounds. Not thoughts. Visible. They formed in the air above the man's mouth. Dark. Heavy. Each syllable taking shape like breath in winter cold. But they didn't rise. They fell. Dropped straight down onto the stone floor like stones into water. Pio stopped moving. The man continued praying, unaware. His lips forming words that materialized and died before they left him. Pio watched one more fall, hit the ground, vanish. Then he turned and left through the side door. The next morning, the man was there again. Same pew, same posture. Pio entered through the sacristy, saw him immediately. He approached slowly, not close enough to disturb, but close enough to see. The words were falling again, each one forming above the man's mouth, each one dropping, none rising. Pio noticed something else this time. The words didn't just fall, they accumulated. A residue remained on the stone floor where the man knelt, invisible to others, but present, like ash, like sediment. The man didn't notice Pio watching, didn't notice anything wrong. He prayed for 20 minutes, then stood, crossed himself, left. Pio remained in the church, walked to where the man had been kneeling. The stone floor was cold, ordinary, but something lingered, a weight, not physical, but present. Pio knelt, touched the stone, felt something like resistance. Like the floor itself had absorbed what fell. He stood, wiped his hand on his habit. The feeling remained. On the third day, Pio waited for the man after he finished praying. "Excuse me." The man turned. He was older than Pio had thought, maybe 50, his face lined, his eyes tired. "Yes, Father, you've been praying here each morning." "Yes. Is that a problem?" "No, but may I ask what you're praying for?" The man hesitated. "My wife, she's ill. The doctors say there's nothing they can do. I'm sorry. I'm asking God to heal her. I come every morning. I've been coming for 2 weeks." Pio studied his face. "Do you feel your prayers are heard?" The man looked confused. I don't know. I hope so." "You hope?" "Yes. Isn't that all we can do?" Pio didn't answer. The man waited, then nodded awkwardly and left. Pio watched him go, saw the way his shoulders slumped, the way his feet dragged. A man carrying something invisible. That evening, Pio went to the man's house. He found it on the edge of the village. Small, poorly maintained, paint peeling from the shutters, weeds growing through cracks in the path. The man answered the door. Surprise crossed his face. "Father Pio, I didn't expect. May I see your wife?" "She's sleeping. I won't disturb her." The man hesitated, then stepped aside. The house was cold inside, dark. A single lamp burned in the main room. Dishes sat unwashed in a basin. Dust covered the furniture. "Upstairs," the man said. Pio climbed the narrow staircase. The steps creaked. The man followed. The bedroom was worse than the rest of the house. The air was stale, the curtains drawn. A single candle burned on the nightstand. The woman lay in bed. Her face was gray, her breathing shallow. Her hands rested on top of the blanket, thin and pale. Pio approached, placed his hand on her forehead. It was burning. She didn't wake. He closed his eyes, prayed silently, not asking for anything, just observing. He felt it immediately. The same weight he'd felt on the church floor, but stronger here, pressing down on her, suffocating. When he opened his eyes, the man was watching from the doorway. "How long has she been like this?" Pio asked. 3 months. "She's getting worse every day." "Have you been with her?" "Every moment I'm not at work or the church." "And when you're at the church, what are you thinking about?" The man frowned. "What do you mean?" "When you pray, where is your attention?" "On my wife, on asking God to heal her." And what? Is that all?" The man's face darkened. "What else should there be?" Pio looked at him, saw something in his eyes, something the man was hiding. "Why do you think she's sick?" "I don't know. These things happen, do they?" The man stepped back. "Father, I don't understand what you're asking." "Neither do I yet." Pio left without explaining, but as he descended the stairs, he heard the man's footsteps following, hesitant, heavy. At the door, the man spoke. "Father, wait." Pio turned. "Do you think?" The man's voice broke. "Do you think God is punishing her?" "For what?" The man looked away. "Nothing. Forget I said anything." He closed the door. Pio stood outside in the cold night air, looked up at the bedroom window where the candle flickered. Something was very wrong here. The next morning, the man wasn't at the church. Or the morning after that. On the third day, he returned. Pio saw him from the altar. Same pew. But something was different. His posture had changed. More desperate. His hands clasped tighter. His head bowed lower. And when Pio looked carefully, he saw the words falling faster. Heavier. Like rocks. After Mass, Pio approached. "Where have you been?" The man looked up. His eyes were red. "My wife is worse. I stayed with her. And now I'm here, praying again. Has anything changed?" "No, nothing changes." His voice cracked. "I pray and nothing happens." Pio sat in the pew beside him. The wood was cold. "May I ask you something?" The man nodded. "When did your wife become ill?" 4 months ago. "And before that, were things well between you?" The man's jaw tightened. "What does that have to do with anything? Were they?" Silence. Then, "No, tell me." The man looked down at his hands. They were shaking. "We fought. Often. About money. About her family. About everything." "Go on." "One night, I said something I shouldn't have. Something cruel. About her mother who had just died. I was angry about something else and I said she was better off dead. That her mother was a burden." Pio felt the temperature in the church drop. And then she didn't speak to me for a week. When she finally did, her voice was different. Cold. 2 days later, she collapsed in the kitchen. The doctors found something in her blood. They don't know what it is. I've asked God to heal her, the man continued. His voice was rising now. Every single day. But he doesn't listen. He listens. Then why doesn't he answer? Perhaps he's waiting for you to answer first. The man looked at him. Answer what? The question you're avoiding. The man stood abruptly. I don't know what you mean. But his face said otherwise. He knew exactly what Pio meant. He left quickly. Almost running. Pio remained in the pew. Looked at the spot where the man had been kneeling. The residue was thicker now. Darker. Growing. That night, Pio couldn't sleep. He lay in his cell, hands throbbing from the wounds he carried. The pain was worse when something unresolved pressed on him. The stigmata had taught him this. Physical pain as a response to spiritual weight. He prayed for the man, for his wife, for understanding. Near midnight, he rose, went to the chapel, knelt before the crucifix. "Show me," he whispered. The chapel was silent, dark except for the single lamp burning before the tabernacle. Then Pio saw it. Not a vision, not a voice. Just knowing. The man's prayers couldn't rise because they were contradicting themselves. He was asking for mercy while refusing to give it, asking for healing while holding bitterness. The words formed, but they carried the weight of what he wouldn't release. And so they fell. The next morning, the man was at the church again, earlier than usual. Before dawn, Pio found him in the same pew, praying desperately. This time, Pio watched from the beginning. The man knelt, clasped his hands, began to pray. The words formed, but this time, Pio saw something else. Each word that fell carried a weight, not from itself, from what was attached to it. Anger, bitterness, resentment, unforgiveness. The man was praying for healing while holding on to its opposite, and the prayers couldn't rise because they were chained to what he refused to release. Pio saw it clearly now, like threads connecting each falling word to something inside the man's chest. Dark threads, heavy. Every word he spoke pulled against those threads. And instead of breaking free, the words were dragged down. Pio approached, sat beside him. "Stop," he said quietly. The man opened his eyes. "What? Stop praying. Why?" "Because you're praying for something while holding on to its opposite." The man stared at him. "I don't understand." "Yes you do." Silence stretched between them. "You want God to heal your wife," Pio continued, "but you haven't forgiven her." The man's face went pale. It doesn't matter what she did. You're asking for mercy while refusing to give it. That's not. Your prayers fall because you're weighing them down." The man stood abruptly. The pew scraped against stone. "You don't know what you're talking about. I see what you won't see. You're a priest. You're supposed to tell me God will answer. God is answering. You're just not listening." The man's hands clenched into fists. "My wife is dying. And you're telling me it's my fault. I'm telling you that what you're holding is killing both of you." The man turned and walked out. The church door slammed. Pio remained in the pew, looked at the spot where the man had been. The residue was so thick now it was almost visible to normal eyes. Almost solid. 3 days passed. The man didn't return to the church. Pio heard nothing from the village. No news. No word. On the 4th day, someone knocked on the monastery door. It was the man's neighbor, a woman in her 60s. Out of breath. "Father, you need to come." His wife. Pio grabbed his stole and followed. They ran through the village, up the narrow street, to the man's house. The door was open. Inside, chaos. Overturned furniture, broken dishes. Pio took the stairs 2 at a time. In the bedroom, the woman was gasping, each breath a struggle. Her eyes were open but unfocused. The man knelt beside her bed, holding her hand. His face was wet with tears. "I'm sorry," he was saying, over and over. "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me, please." Pio entered the room. The man looked up. "She's dying. I waited too long." The woman's breathing grew more labored. Her hand went limp in her husband's grip. "Say it," Pio said. The man looked at him. "What?" "Tell her what you need to say. All of it." The man's face crumpled. "I blamed you, for your mother, for the burden, for everything. And when you got sick, I thought it was your fault. That you were weak, that you were punishing me by being sick." He was sobbing now. "But it's me. I'm the one who's sick. I'm the one who's been dying inside." The woman's eyes focused, found his face. "I forgive you," she whispered. The man collapsed forward, his head on her chest. Pio knelt on the other side of the bed, placed his hand on the woman's forehead. The fever was gone. He began to pray, not asking for healing, just offering what was there. And this time, when the words formed, they rose. Slowly, hesitantly, but they rose. Pio saw them, watched them lift from his lips, watched them ascend, unweighted, free. The woman didn't die that day, or the next. By the end of the week, she was sitting up, drinking broth, speaking in full sentences. The color had returned to her face. The fever hadn't come back. The doctors called it a miracle, said they'd never seen anything like it. One day dying, the next day recovering. The man came to the church every morning. But now, when he prayed, his words rose immediately. Pio watched from a distance, saw the difference. Not in the words themselves. In what they carried. Nothing. They carried nothing but themselves. And so they rose. A month later, the man came to confession. "Father, I need to tell you something." Pio waited. "When you said my prayers were falling, I was angry. I thought you were judging me, accusing me, and now I understand. I was asking God to do something I wasn't willing to do myself." "Which was?" "Let go." Pio nodded through the screen. "My wife is healing," the man continued. "Not just her body, something else. She looks at me differently now, like she's seeing me for the first time. She is. But why? Why does that matter to God?" "Because God doesn't answer prayers that contradict his nature." "What do you mean?" "You can't ask for mercy while refusing to give it. You can't ask for forgiveness while holding unforgiveness. The request cancels itself." The man absorbed this. "So all those mornings I spent praying were wasted, not because God wasn't listening, because you weren't ready to receive what you were asking for." Silence. "How did you know?" the man finally asked. "How did you see it?" "I've learned to see what people carry. Most of the time, they don't know they're carrying it. But you saw." "Yes. Can you see if I'm carrying anything now?" Pio was quiet for a moment. Then, "No. You've let it go." He heard the man exhale. A sound like relief. "Thank you, Father." "Don't thank me. Thank the God who waited for you to be ready." Years later, a young man came to Pio with a similar complaint. "Father, I've been praying for months, asking God to restore my relationship with my brother. But nothing happens. Have you forgiven him?" The young man hesitated. "He doesn't deserve forgiveness." "That's not what I asked." "No, I haven't forgiven him." "Then your prayers won't rise." "What?" Pio looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "You're asking God to do something you won't do yourself. The request is contradicting itself." "But he wronged me." "And you're asking God to make things right, but you won't participate in making them right." The young man looked confused. "I don't understand." "You will. When your prayers start falling instead of rising, you'll understand." "What do you mean, falling?" But Pio didn't explain. Some things could only be learned through experience. The young man left frustrated, but Pio knew he'd be back. They always came back. In his final years, Pio thought often about the man whose prayers fell, about how many people came to God asking for things while holding on to their opposites, asking for peace while nurturing anger, asking for healing while feeding bitterness, asking for restoration while refusing reconciliation. The prayers formed. They always formed, but they couldn't rise. Not because God refused them, because the person praying had weighted them down with contradictions. And Pio learned that the most important prayer wasn't the one asking for something. It was the one that released what was preventing the answer. When people asked him how to pray effectively, he never gave complicated instructions. He said, "Let go of what contradicts what you're asking for." How do I know what that is? You already know. You're just pretending you don't. And that was the truth Padre Pio carried with him. Prayer wasn't about convincing God. It was about aligning yourself with what you were asking for. The words always formed, but only certain prayers rose. And the difference was never in the words themselves. It was in what the person praying was willing to release.